Welcome. Thank you guys all for sticking around. Really excited about this panel because we have a lot of different perspectives on the interoperable world that is Web3, and more specifically, obviously, multi-chain, which includes L1s, L2s, L3s even. So wanted to kick it off maybe with you guys introducing yourselves and sharing what you guys do at your companies.
Hey all, so I'm Skeletor, or Skelly for short. I'm the co-founder and lead architect at Wonderland. We are a core development group. We work with different kind of protocols in the ecosystem. We try to build cool things. Our URL is DeFi sucks. Should be crypto sucks right now. It kind of got outdated. We don't do DeFi, solely DeFi anymore. And yeah, I mean, we know it sucks. We know like nobody can build everything, so we're just trying to get shit built as best as we can.
Cool, thank you. My name's Harry. I lead the developer relations team at Chainlink Labs, and what we build is we work on a platform called Chainlink, which is basically a collection of services for developers to do a bunch of stuff that you can't do on a blockchain natively, such as obtain data from the off-chain world, cross-chain communications, automating smart contract calls, randomness, and things like that.
Hey everyone, I'm Mats. I'm a co-founder and CTO at Dune. At Dune, we think of ourselves as crypto's data platform. You've probably seen dashboards or graphs flying around Twitter or Warpcast or something like that. And yeah, we think of ourselves as making crypto data accessible, and yeah.
Awesome. Getting right into it, I know most of us have been here for a while, many years, and there have been a lot of assumptions that we've made along the way around multi-chain ecosystem. Will it be multi-chain? Is it Ethereum alone? So would love to hear some of the assumptions you guys had, which have proven to be true and which you've realized are false or maybe have changed over the years.
Yeah, I can try. So I think the weirdest thing of kind of all of this scalability problem that we're trying to solve is that I thought there were going to be more, let's say, L2, L3, L4, et cetera, et cetera. I think the complexity in the UX that we are seeing right now with just L1s and L2 and like a few other L1s is like too big for us to also include like layer 3s and layer 4s, et cetera. So I think that's the kind of the key thing that I saw that didn't like kind of really made sense of what's my kind of prediction of the future. I hope we get there sometime because obviously scalability kind of goes even higher with those type of kind of layer 3 and 4s. But I mean, whatever, we'll get eventually there.
I can go. I think I probably thought that block space would grow sort of in relation to the amount of apps that we have and activity on chain, and I think maybe block space is growing a little bit faster than the amount of demand for doing transactions on chain, and so I think that's been like the most surprising thing is how quickly, especially this year, we've built layer 2s and layer 3s, and I actually think they kind of work, and the UX isn't actually that horrible. The DevX is worse than the UX. But yeah, I hope we get a lot more apps coming out.
Okay, so my background is I came from the consulting space where I was a solution architect specifically focused on integration. And so when I first saw other chains starting to pop up, other than Ethereum, side chains, etc., like I straight away knew that eventually we'd be in a world where chains would communicate with each other, because I just saw them as two or multiple very similar systems that seem like they should be able to interoperate, like connect with each other and talk with each other. So I guess in terms of what ended up being true, just the fact that we would get into the world today where we're definitely in like a cross-chain world where chains can communicate with each other. In terms of things that weren't so true, I would say that I didn't know it would be so complex, I guess. So I always assumed it would be a simple problem that would eventually be solved, just like traditional enterprise applications that talk to each other. But it's a really hard problem to solve, actually, and there's a lot of nuances, a lot of considerations, a lot of security considerations, and I probably underestimated it back a few years ago.
It sounds like all three of you feel you underestimated the complexity, or kind of the multi-dimensional world. There's L1s, L2s, L3s. How do you view your project's role in kind of enabling that multi-chain ecosystem?
Okay, I'll go first. So Chainlink's role, what we see our role in a multi-chain ecosystem is we have one of the various developer services we have is called CCIP, Cross-Chain Interoperability Protocol. And that is a protocol that enables the transfer of data or tokens or both between blockchain networks. And we see a future, or our kind of vision for the future is there's going to be lots of chains, hundreds of chains, thousands of chains, public chains, private chains, app chains, etc. And we see CCIP as obviously being the glue that connects them, whether it's a public, private chain, whatever it is. So our role in enabling that future is by creating the most reliable and secure cross-chain communication protocol for developers to use.
Yeah, so at Dune, I think we play two roles. One, as the complexity of understanding user activity once that activity goes across different chains. Like, I think 2 weeks ago, Uniswap launched cross-chain swaps together with Across. And now, actually understanding the user intent is a lot harder than it was 2 weeks prior to that. So I think our role primarily lies in tying together all the pieces when the world actually fragments into 100 or 1,000 chains, being able to offer you that unified picture of adoption or activity. And secondly, more recently, we've also started working on solutions to improve the developer experience. Given that we have all the data from all these applications and chains, we think we can do a pretty good job at consolidating that into some nice-to-use endpoints that will be coming out soon.
Nice. So yeah, I mean, the cool thing about Wonderland is that we are kind of this core protocol, core development group for multiple protocols. So right now we have a partnership with Optimism, but we are trying to collaborate as well more kind of on a, I mean, I have a hat that says public goods are good. So I very, very believe, and Wonderland believes, that public goods are the way forward, and collaboration usually helps way more than competition. I mean, competition is good, but ideally, and what we try to kind of promote through Wonderland also with our partners is kind of a spirit of collaboration, a spirit of saying, hey, I mean, how can we build better things together? How can we have this kind of more holistic view of the ecosystem, of the problems that we're trying to tackle? I mean, as Harry was saying, there are going to be a shitload of chains very soon. I mean, and there is no clear path or way. Nobody's thinking, everybody's kind of just thinking on their solution and what fits my use case or my specific protocol, etc. There is not, sadly, a lot of kind of intercommunication between teams, especially like core dev teams working on the protocols, which literally don't give a fuck about the business side of things, usually. They just want to build cool shit. So yeah, I mean, we are trying to push that kind of boat ahead a little bit.
Harry, I want to come back to you because Chainlink just announced 2 weeks ago, I believe, at Sibos, a really huge partnership between the largest US banks, including Swift and a few other sort of payment infrastructure providers to enable more of like a multi-chain ecosystem. Could you share more about what you guys are doing there? And then also, how could that actually benefit the Ethereum ecosystem, solving some of our other multi-chain problems outside of the banks?
Yeah, sure. That's a big question, and I'll try and give a big answer. So who here, can you put your hand up, was around in the space following it back in like 2019? Okay, we see a few hands here. So back then, banks and capital markets and financial institutions were not really into blockchain technology as a whole, and the technology wasn't really proven. And there were some proof of concepts that were done, but they were kind of just done by like a, future thinking team, then they'd put out a press release or something. But now banks and financial institutions and capital markets and people like Swift are like really interested in tokenization, and they've kind of realized that the benefits that they can have. And so we're doing a lot of work with some of these people on enabling tokenization for some of their systems. And two things specifically which were a problem back then but aren't a problem now is back then there was no ecosystem of chains connected to each other. Interoperability was not a thing back then. And that was an issue for them because they don't want to go on a IBM Hyperledger chain with their competitors, and they don't want their competitors to see their data and things like that as well. So that was the first problem. The second problem was privacy and compliance. They don't want the Chainlink network or anyone looking at an Explorer to be able to see the transactions that were happening. But now we've kind of progressed a little bit, and Chainlink's done a lot of work, and we've actually solved these problems, and that's kind of why we're doing some work with them. So they don't want to connect to Ethereum, they don't want to connect to Solana, they don't want to bet on a chain. They want to like connect to one thing and have that one thing be the thing that connects them to all of the blockchains, whether public, private, bank chains, etc. So what we've basically enabled is the use of CCRP to be that thing, that glue that connects their systems, or in this case, they run blockchains themselves, usually private blockchains, with other bank private blockchains, or sometimes with public blockchains as well. The second thing that we've enabled with them is we've done some work with ANZ. So for those that don't know, ANZ is probably the biggest bank in Australia, in creating some privacy preserving features for CCRP. So going back to that second thing I talked about, where they can't have you or me looking at the data that they're kind of sending to from one bank chain to another bank chain. And another thing is they don't want Chainlink nodes or the Chainlink network or anyone connecting to their private chain and just querying the data and seeing what's in certain blocks or transactions because of compliance laws. So we've enabled basically filtering at the RPC level where the Chainlink network or the Chainlink nodes can connect to their private chain and only do what they're meant to do, only see the data that they're meant to see and only perform the actions that they're meant to perform, but not see or do anything else. So that solves that problem. And then the data visibility problem, we've implemented some encryption where if I'm running a private chain, I can allow CCRP, the public CCRP network, to grab some data or to do a token transfer or something. That information is encrypted, sent using CCRP to the other private bank chain, and then they can decrypt it using basic encryption, and then they can do whatever they have to do on the other side. But then anyone that looks at the transaction data, anyone that looks at CCRP, doesn't see what's happening. So what this enables in terms of the overall ecosystem is it enables the use of the technology to be used by these banking people and capital markets institutions, mostly in a private scenario first because of it's an evolving space and there's still regulatory things that are catching up. But then eventually we see a world where a lot of this stuff will merge with the on-chain public world, the DeFi world, where you have a convergence of the traditional financial world with tokenization and tokenized assets coming on-chain, and then making their way throughout the Web3 ecosystem into DeFi applications and things like that.
Cool. That sounds like a really great use case specific approach, and I feel like we kind of lack that at times in the space. I wanted to bring it over to Skelly to discuss something a bit similar, which is obviously Wonderland has been a core dev with Connects, now Everclear, and also Optimism. So you guys are probably quite familiar with the interop problem. I wanted to hear how you guys are thinking about that, specifically in sort of the L2 and Optimism ecosystems.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm both kind of bearish and bullish on the topic. There is a lot of work to do. I mean, Matt, you said you were pretty optimistic. The UX is probably better. At least for me, I know my mom and nobody in my family will able to use I know, say, hey, I want to swap some tokens to this chain, and then I need to have gas also this chain because I didn't have the native token, and maybe it's a custom gas token, so I need to figure out how the fuck do I get the token there to relay my transaction because I didn't pay a relayer fee to get the transaction in. And all of this gets even worse when you start adding kind of interoperability and making kind of it easier for people to do that. The bullish side of that is that all of that should be abstracted away from the user. My mom shouldn't care about if she pay the relayer fee or not. It should be a relayer that is abstracted away at the application level, I mean, crypto has this problem that we are building a shit ton of infra, not enough products, because obviously it's very hard to build products in crypto. There is no fucking user, so why would you, right? VCs won't fund you. We had a big discussion about this a little bit earlier. So the thing is, that's the problem, right? I mean, eventually we'll get there. Crypto is advancing very, very fast. We know, like, Web3 moves extremely fast. So probably we'll get to a way better point. We are like a very technical team, so obviously we are very good at doing infra. We suck at building products, and I'm amazed at the people that have kind of the balls to go and say, "Oh, I'm going to build a product in Web3." Like, bless you, like, please do. But like, yeah, best of luck or whatever. So yeah, that's basically it.
So bullish and bearish. Mats, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I think one reason that we don't talk about is that how it's a lot easier to monetize a network than an application as well. Like, we could all spin up some chains and add some tokens in there, and it would be good for the core devs on that. But if you actually want to build an application, that's a long, hard grind, and the failure rates are incredibly high. And I think, yeah, as long as there's a problem there as well, I think. But yeah, my grandma can definitely also not bridge tokens and stuff like that. I think for better or worse, the users in crypto right now are somewhat crypto native at least. And I think we are starting to get applications that at least we know how to use. Before, we had applications that we didn't know how to use. Like, yeah, don't want to get into it even, but I've lost a lot of money on apps just not working and having no docs. And some person on Discord that works at the project doesn't even know how it works. So at least we're a little bit beyond that phase, I think.
Definitely a little bit better. Mats, I actually wanted to bring it back to you. So Dune obviously indexes L1, L2 data. How do you guys think about prioritizing chains and which you prioritize? And then how do you also think about your position in kind of enabling that ecosystem itself with Dune kind of as that layer to give people access to that chain?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Dune comes from a very EVM-centric world. When we founded the company in 2018, there was basically only Ethereum and Bitcoin that was around that had any meaningful activity. And Ethereum was the only smart contract platform that actually worked. So a lot has happened the last 6 years. Now we have hundreds of smart contract chains, EVM, SVM, etc. And I actually think when we go beyond the L1s and the L2s, people building L3s, I think that's actually really interesting. There's a lot of people who are bearish on L3s and app chains, but I actually think it's kind of cool that you can build this block space for your application with the security guarantees that is necessary maybe for a game, which might be very low, but you maintain interoperability with the rest of the ecosystem through some funky bridges and whatnot, but at least you can still sort of move assets and do things with the same wallet and stuff like that. But the way we think about onboarding chains to Dune is really like, when we partner with them, we try to shine a light on what's special about that ecosystem and about the use case. Usually the L2s and the L3s serve some niche in the market. Some of them are generalist chains, but others have like, oh, we're a DeFi chain or we're a gaming-specific chain. And working with them is always a little bit different, trying to showcase the differences. Yeah.
Very cool. I wanted to switch over to a spicy topic, which is, we've always talked about layer 2s as the way that Ethereum scales. Ethereum can't scale without L2s. And yet, a lot of what we debate now is whether Ethereum will actually capture the value that those L2s are creating, those L3s are creating. So curious how each of you think about that problem.
I can take that. So, I mean, first of all, most of these L2s do use Ether as gas. Obviously, ETH is cheaper on L2, so obviously it's not the same kind of network effect that you will get if you span, let's say, multiple Ethereum L1s. Obviously, that would suck. But besides that, there is obviously this matter of adoption that we would get by having increased block space, or at least we thought that we would get with that. As Matt was saying, like, we have more block space that we know what to do with it, right? Like, there is, obviously, you have some chains that are for example, as Base, that are literally need more solutions to scale, and as soon as possible, because they're kind of at the top of the limit. But besides that one edge case, most chains are kind of meh. They do have space, and they are themselves fighting for space to post their blobs or the data availability on L1. So basically, Ethereum is not gaining a lot of money, but having some sort of income from having all of those data availability kind of events being posted on L1. But I mean, yeah, then there is this question of we will also get scalability using L2s, but we might get scalability using different type of solutions that not necessarily would benefit Ethereum and might kind of cannibalize a little bit that, but that's kind of branching off to another direction. But
I'll just go, actually, because I think when we introduced blobs, we created the second market for Ethereum. Before, we had to settle using call data, and that was very expensive. But at least everybody sort of paid a lot of money to settle to Ethereum. Now, there's a disconnect between how much it costs doing a regular transaction on Ethereum versus settling a blob that contains that transaction on the side. I'm not an economist, nor do I have the right answer to this, but it seems a little bit weird that that this arbitrage exists. But yeah, I don't actually know the future. If I knew if Ethereum would gain or lose value, I think probably wouldn't be sitting here. Would be on some Thai island instead. But yeah, I don't know. Can you predict the future?
No, I cannot. Yeah, I don't necessarily see it as a big. The question was around value capture of Ethereum versus L2s, etc. I see Ethereum as kind of just the slow-moving center of gravity or force that keeps all of the rest of the ecosystem together, which kind of means that it already does indirectly have all of the value anyway, right? Because if Ethereum stops working, what happens to everything else? So yeah, I think the way things are going is it's just going to continue to remain as so, and I see that value capture in L2s and L3s, etc., is okay, and as long as Ethereum remains that kind of center of force or gravity that keeps everything connected and keeps everything running in a proper way and in a secure manner.
That's a really beautiful way to end that question. I want to open up to questions from others. I see a hand over there.
Hey guys, thanks everyone for the panel. Harry, I have a question for you. How do you see Chainlink and, for example, CCIP integrating with small chains that, for example, let's say I'm with a team, a very small team, I have my own small chain, I want to integrate my chain to CCIP, how would I do it? And on the same note, I think, Matt, you released an integration with Conduit, right, to make this happen. I think that's great, so congrats on that. So yeah, how do you see the parallel thing with Chainlink?
Okay, right now it's kind of a convoluted process where you have to reach out to us and say, hey, we want CCIP on our chain, or hey, we want Chainlink stuff on our chain, and we have to integrate CCIP onto your chain based on resourcing and availability and stuff like that. So it's not the most scalable way, but if you take a look at our socials, you see we recently announced this thing called the Chainlink Runtime Environment a couple of weeks ago at our conference called SmartCon, and basically that's a re-architecture of the whole Chainlink platform, which enables us to really scale out to a lot more chains a lot faster, where essentially we've broken down Chainlink products into core microservices, or what we call them capabilities, off-chain on our own platform, and integrating with a chain becomes as simple as us adding chain reader and chain writer capabilities for that chain. But then we don't need to deploy all the core smart contracts and things like that, because we move a lot of that off into what we call the CRE, and then the integration process for a new chain, no matter how small or big, is a matter of days as opposed to weeks or months. So I think long-term CRE, you should look up that and see some of the info on that. But in the short term, before that's public, you need to speak to us to do that.
I have a follow-up on that. Like, do you see Chainlink being deployed as a one-click solution, as like with a conduit or whatever kind of these RAS providers do with other services?
Do I see Chainlink as a one-stop interoperability solution?
No, like a one-click install solution.
Oh, a one-click install solution. Yeah, a lot of people would say, you know, so you press one button and everything happens, but it's rarely the case. We spent a lot of work trying to make it as easy to integrate as possible and use. However, in the end, it's a pretty tricky and complicated thing that you're working on. Like sending messages and tokens across a chain is not like a trivial thing. And so I'm not sure if we'll ever get to like a one-click scenario, but maybe like in my opinion, like a 5-minute scenario is pretty good. If you can get to a wow moment, a success moment where you can integrate your service, use your thing, and it's successful and it works and the docs were correct, and then you can move on to your next problem. To me, that's something that's like a pretty good standard of DevX, in my opinion.
Is there any other questions? If not, I can follow up.
Yeah.
A follow-up question.
Can I ask a question to Eva? That's a graph. We're building projects on Solana, and we found out actually it's not that easy, or the graph is not so supportive on Solana. So we wonder what's the roadmap of the graph in terms of supporting Solana. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was about a week or two ago, we actually just announced some work that Propeller Heads was doing. They spoke earlier today on creating custom substreams modules. And if you're not familiar, substreams are real-time streaming infrastructure to make it just much easier to get the data from higher block time chains. So Solana actually is not very well suited for subgraphs. And there's quite a few chains that are like that, but they're very well suited for substreams, Firehose, and so that would be the solution. So actually, we've got some DevRel folks here that can talk to you about that if you want to learn more about substreams. Yep.
A question for Mats. You mentioned Dune is looking to work on more developer tools, assuming more advanced APIs, make it easier for developers to build apps. I think that's a super important role for indexers, by the way. Do you mind double clicking on that, like a little bit on the vision, and is, you know, also along the dimension of centralized versus decentralized services? Would be super interested in that.
Yeah. First, to double click on the API side. So tomorrow's our version of this DuneCon, and we're announcing a new product that I've been working on recently, which is essentially developer platform with APIs that take data from all the networks that we support, not all of them right now, but a growing list, and make it easier to retrieve data from them in real time and put them into an application. So things like token balances, transaction history, wallet activity, stuff like that. And basically, we see it as an extension of our mission of making crypto data accessible, like to take that away from just being for analytics and be for building as well. And I think I lied a little bit when I said the UX is kind of good, because like the one thing that really pisses me off in crypto is that a page takes like 5 seconds to load every time. It's like you click a button and it has to do 150 RPC requests to get balances or to get like your history on the side. And I'm sort of on a like crusade against the 5-second page load. So we're building some APIs that are really fast that will hopefully solve that. On the centralized versus decentralized, this is an age-old debate, I think. Is the thing I heard the most in 2018 when we started Dune was like, but is it decentralized? And it's not, of course, it's centralized. And yeah, I don't know. I just don't think that's a problem. I think in the future, we'll probably have ways to verify data using proofs instead of sort of like a decentralized network. And in the meantime, yeah, I don't think it's a big issue.
Am I still on? Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to add, I agree with you, and I feel there's a tension between centralized data and APIs versus good and good UX. I am on the side of we need to build better products right now and focus on users and growth now, and I think that's an important problem to tackle. So,
yeah, I think like even like making things performant in a centralized manner is difficult. Like creating APIs that return, I don't know, the wallet balance for a user across 30 chains in a centralized manner, that's like very hard to do if you just build it on one server. If you're somehow trying to decentralize that and fragment it across a network, it's going to be very slow. Or at least we don't have ways to make it very fast today. If you're thinking about a query engine like the one that runs on Dune.com, Dune SQL, it's sort of a distributed query engine that runs on our cloud platform. If you try to decentralize something like that, you're never getting a response to your queries. So I think there are just like practical trade-offs here, and right now at least, decentralization of something like that is a pipe dream.
Did you guys want to answer that? No? Okay, I think that's a great place to leave off. Thank you all so much. Thanks to our panelists.